The catering manager leaned toward me, his face tight with a mix of pity and professional stress. He whispered, "We need a final head count right now. Your guests are 30 minutes late." 30 minutes. For a fully prepaid anniversary gala with a live band, a 3-course plated dinner, and a custom gold cake taller than my 9-year-old niece. I looked at the grand double doors of the ballroom, expecting them to swing open at any second. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the faint, awkward tuning of a violin. That was the exact moment my phone finally lit up on the white linen tablecloth. I lunged for it, certain it was a frantic call about a limousine breakdown or a massive traffic jam. Instead, it was a notification from the family group chat. My brother had sent a single casual message. "We moved it. Different venue. Didn't you see the update?" My breath hitched in my throat as I scrolled frantically through the previous messages. There was no update, no missed call, no email. The champagne tower just sat there, the bubbles dying out, sweating into itself like it knew the truth before I did. "My name is Olivia Hart. I am 29 years old, and for my entire life, I have been the reliable one. In the messy architecture of my family, I was the human backup generator that kicked in whenever everyone else's power cut out. If a bill was overdue, they called me. If a car broke down in the middle of the night, I was the one driving through the rain with jumper cables. I was the fixer, the one who figured it out so they didn't have to deal with the consequences of their own chaos. Being the dependable middle child meant I was invisible until something was broken. My parents and my brother Marcus treated my stability as a natural resource, something they could mine forever without ever needing to replenish. I thought this night mattered to them because they said it did. I thought that by creating this perfect anniversary gala for our parents, I was finally earning a seat at the table instead of just serving the food. I stood in that empty hall, 29 years of being the responsible one, crashing down on me. I realized then that they didn't value my reliability. They simply used it to build a stage for themselves that didn't include me. I booked the ballroom 6 months early, securing the most prestigious date on the calendar. When Marcus and my aunts said funds were tight, I paid the massive deposit in full, believing their promises that they would square up later. I negotiated the band's fee down for hours, making sure the musicians were paid fairly, while keeping the total cost from spiraling out of control. I stayed up for 3 straight nights, my eyes burning, as I hand-designed the printed programs and place cards. I even skipped my own planned summer vacation to the coast, just to keep the event budget alive when unexpected fees popped up. I confirmed every single RSVP personally, calling distant cousins and old family friends to ensure the head count was perfect. When my aunt complained that the standard chicken entree felt cheap, I dipped into my personal savings to upgrade the entire menu to prime rib and sea bass. I drained my savings account until it looked like a ghost town with tumbleweeds blowing through the balance. I did everything. I touched every fork, checked every candle, and verified every floral arrangement. I poured every cent and every ounce of my energy into making this night a flawless masterpiece for people who weren't even coming. Looking back, the micro-disrespect signals were everywhere, flashing like red neon lights I chose to ignore. As the date grew closer, their replies in the group chat became shorter and colder. When I sent photos of the floral proofs, Marcus simply texted, "Cool." When I asked for help choosing the wine pairings, my mother replied, "Make it nicer. You're better at this stuff anyway." They treated my labor as an obligation, something I owed them for the privilege of being part of the family. Whenever I tried to discuss the ballooning costs or the stress of the logistics, I was met with dismissive phrases like, "Don't overthink it," or "You're handling it, so why worry us?" Not once in 6 months did anyone ask what the gala was costing me, either financially or emotionally. They never asked if I needed a break, or if I wanted help with the physical labor of setting up the displays. They just assumed I would absorb the pressure, the cost, and the exhaustion, because that was my role. I was the worker bee, and they were the royalty waiting to arrive for the honey. I see now that their silence wasn't trust, it was total indifference to my sacrifice. I called my brother Marcus, my fingers trembling as I pressed the phone to my ear. I expected a panicked explanation, but instead I heard the bright, sharp clinking of glasses and loud laughter in the background. "We're already at the new place," Marcus said, his voice sounding casual and annoyingly bright. "The private club downtown. It's smaller, more exclusive. We decided the ballroom you picked was just a bit much." My throat went dry. "New place?" I managed to whisper. There was a brief pause, a moment where he could have apologized, but he didn't. "Yeah," he said with a shrug I could practically hear through the phone. "We figured you'd be too busy setting up your big project to check your messages. We didn't want to bother you." No one had sent a message. I checked every app, every folder. Nothing. Then, I heard a voice in the background. It sounded like one of our cousins, laughing as they said, "Did she really book that huge, empty hall? How embarrassing." The betrayal wasn't just that they moved the party. It was that they had turned my hard work into a punchline while I was still standing in the middle of it. I hung up the phone and looked around. 200 white chairs stood in perfect, haunting rows like obedient soldiers with no war to attend. The gold ribbons on the chair backs moved slightly in the breeze from the air conditioning, a rhythmic waving to a crowd that didn't exist. On the main table, the 5-tier gold cake stood tall, but its intricate sugar flowers seemed to lean under their own weight, as if the sugar itself was tired of waiting. A lone violinist in the corner was still tuning his instrument, the screeching notes echoing off the high ceilings. Waiters hovered near the kitchen doors with trays of hors d'oeuvres that felt heavier with every passing minute of silence. My name was still glowing on the large digital welcome screen at the entrance of the ballroom. Host, Olivia Hart. It didn't look like a celebration anymore. It looked like a museum of wasted love, a gallery of my own desperation to be noticed by people who viewed me as a utility instead of a human being. The sheer scale of the emptiness was breathtaking. I had built a cathedral of devotion, and the gods I built it for had decided to go to a bar instead. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't throw the expensive champagne across the room. Instead, something deep inside my chest simply clicked into glass. It was a cold, hard, reflective feeling. I felt incredibly clear-headed, as if a thick fog had finally lifted from my life. I walked calmly over to the catering manager, who was watching me with an expression of genuine horror. I didn't ask for a tissue. Instead, I asked him for a copy of every single contract, every signed invoice, and every digital attendance confirmation he had on file. He hesitated for a second, then nodded and hurried to his office. A few minutes later, he returned and handed me a neat, heavy stack of papers. It was a complete trail of my effort and my money. I held the stack in my hands, feeling the weight of it. This was my new favorite book. It contained the truth in black and white, proof of every cent I had spent and every lie they had told. I realized that while they had the party, I had the paperwork. The reliable one was done fixing things for them. I was about to start fixing things for myself. Initially, I thought it ended there. I figured I would just take the loss, pay off the remaining credit card debt, and never speak to them again. It was an expensive lesson in self-worth, and I was prepared to move on and lick my wounds in private. But then the manager spoke up again. "Miss Hart," he said, looking at the papers. "Since this was billed as a sponsored family event, the venue tagged all the co-hosts on the agreement draft that your brother, Marcus, approved last month." My heart stopped. "Approved?" I asked. He showed me the digital log. Marcus had signed off on the final event details and the shared responsibility clause. He had told everyone in the family that I was just helping with the planning, but legally, he had signed a document acknowledging that he and the other siblings were co-hosts of the event. He had tried to take the credit for the prestige without intending to pay a dime. I wasn't the sole host in the eyes of the law. I felt a surge of cold adrenaline. I sat down at one of the empty tables and sent one very calm email with attachments to every listed co-host, including my brother and my aunts. Subject line: Shared Financial Responsibility Notice. No insults, just math. The replies came back faster than I ever expected, and they were dripping with nervous energy. "I didn't know you paid already," my Aunt Sarah wrote, her usual confidence replaced by a frantic tone. "Marcus said the venue was on hold and nothing was finalized," another cousin chimed in. "Why is my name on a legal agreement?" The panic was palpable. They had all been happy to let Marcus lead them to a more exclusive venue because they thought the original one, my ballroom, was a freebie they could just discard. Now that there was a paper trail linking them to the costs, the tone changed instantly. The private club they had moved to somehow saw the growing email thread. Perhaps someone there was a friend of the ballroom manager. They immediately requested proof of the original payment source for their new booking, fearing they were caught in the middle of a family fraud situation. The party at the private club froze mid-cocktail. The music stopped, the laughter died, and the exclusive atmosphere evaporated as the reality of the legal contracts I held started to sink in. They wanted a night of luxury, but they were suddenly staring at a mountain of debt they hadn't planned for. I expected apologies. I thought that seeing the invoices and the signed contracts would make them realize how much they had hurt me. Instead, my phone began to vibrate violently. It was Marcus. When I answered, he wasn't sorry. He was furious. "You embarrassed us," he screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You sent those documents to everyone. Do you have any idea how bad that makes us look at the club?" I waited for him to finish his tantrum, feeling remarkably calm. I said only one sentence. "I simply forwarded the legal documents that you digitally signed and approved, Marcus." Silence hit the line like a dropped plate. He knew he was caught. He had signed those papers to look important to the venue staff, never dreaming I would actually use them as evidence. While he was stammering for a response, the venue manager tapped me on the shoulder. He informed me that under cancellation and diversion clause, unused services for a cancelled event could be converted into a corporate credit package instead of being forfeited entirely. This wasn't a refund, but it was a transfer of value. My mind began to race with a brand new plan. I didn't cancel the event. I didn't let the food go to waste or the band go home. I repurposed the entire evening. I realized that I had a fully paid-for, world-class event space for the next 6 hours, and I wasn't going to spend it crying in an empty chair. I spent the next hour making calls, not to family, but to the local community. 3 weeks later, using the corporate credit the venue allowed me to carry over, the ballroom filled up again. But this time, the energy was different. This time, the room was packed with local small business owners, young entrepreneurs, and leaders of various nonprofit organizations. I renamed the event Community Launch Night. I used the same band I had negotiated with, the same delicious food, and even the same golden cake design. I just had the baker remove the happy anniversary topper and replace it with a sleek, professional logo. I stood at the microphone, looking out at a room full of people who actually wanted to be there. I used the slot to officially launch my own boutique event planning studio. By the end of the night, I was booked solid for 4 months. My life stopped orbiting the needs of my family and finally found its own sun. The success of that first, repurposed night was a springboard I never saw coming. People were so impressed by the seamless transition and the professional atmosphere that word spread like wildfire through the city. I became known as the planner who could handle anything, even a total abandonment. I kept a specific catchphrase ready like a polished coin in my pocket for whenever someone asked how I managed to pull off such a big launch so quickly. I kept the receipts. It was a double entendre that only I and a few others truly understood. It meant I had the physical proof of my investments, but it also meant I had learned the value of my own labor. I no longer did favors that drained my bank account. I no longer figured it out for people who didn't respect my time. I ran my business with the same reliability I used to give my family for free, but now that reliability was a premium service. I was finally being paid what I was worth, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't tired. The fallout for my family was a slow, quiet burn. Photos from my community launch night began to circulate through the same social circles that had skipped the original anniversary gala. People in our town started asking questions. They wanted to know why the family gala had suddenly turned into a high-end business showcase. When people asked the vendors, the caterers, the florist, the band, they didn't lie. They answered honestly, citing the dates on the contracts and the signatures on the change of service forms. The truth came out. The family had abandoned a daughter who had paid for everything. Slowly but consistently, invitations stopped arriving for Marcus and my parents. They weren't blocked or banned, they were just quietly left off the lists. Social circles have a way of policing their own, and people who betray their own blood over a bar tab aren't exactly high-priority guests. There was no big shouting match in the street, just a growing absence of social life for them. The social gravity had changed direction, and they were suddenly the ones on the outside looking in. They had their exclusive night at the club, but it cost them their reputation. One Tuesday morning, at my new, tiny office, the sunlight slid across my desk and warmed a ceramic mug that had the word Founder printed on it in gold letters. Steam curled from me coffee like a tiny victory flag that didn't need any wind to fly. My calendar was full of meetings with clients who respected me, and my phone was blissfully calm. For once, nobody needed rescuing. There were no emergency texts about unpaid electric bills or forgotten birthdays. I was sitting there enjoying the silence when my mother visited without warning. She looked different, smaller somehow, as if her pride had been through a high-heat dryer and shrunk. She didn't look angry anymore. She just looked tired. She sat across from me and stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "They thought you'd just absorb the cost like always, Olivia," she said, her voice cracking. "We all did. We never thought you'd actually stand up." I didn't feel the need to argue. I just handed her a printed photo from my launch night, a shot of a packed room with people standing and applauding mid-frame. "I did absorb it," I said softly. "It just grew somewhere else." My mother cried softly, into a tissue, but I realized she wasn't crying for the money or the lost gala. She was crying because she finally saw the pattern she had helped create. A pattern I had finally broken. I never got the big, cinematic apology speech that people often imagine at the end of stories like this. Marcus never called to say he was a monster, and my aunts never sent checks to cover the prime rib, but what I got was much better than an apology. I got respect backed by paperwork. I got a career I love, and a life that belongs to me. I learned that being reliable is only a virtue if you are being reliable to yourself first. Now, I look at that empty ballroom in my memory not as a place of failure, but as the place where I was reborn. If you had been standing there with me that night, surrounded by 200 empty chairs and a melting gold cake, what would you have done next? Have you ever had to take the ruins of a betrayal and use them to build a foundation for a brand new life? I did, and I kept the receipts to prove it.